Hi, everybody. We are here with you the week before we start Holy Week, or rather the Wednesday before we start Holy Week. And we will be reading a rather long section to you today. 2 chapters from the Gospel according to St. John, what is typically known as John's Passion narrative. And each gospel has its own passion narrative. And the passion narrative is the narrative that goes from Jesus' arrest to his betrayal, to his trial, and then through his crucifixion. And first of all, I want to point out that the reason there are only 2 of us here with you today is because Pastor Jen is home recovering from COVID. And the reason Craig has on a suit today in his office and I have on civvies in my home is that Craig has a funeral this afternoon at church and I'm home recovering from COVID. So it's been a strange week. Yeah. And as we head into Holy Week, Jesus' followers, his disciples, the crowds must have been thinking as well, it's been a strange week. So Craig and I are going to read to you, trade off back and forth the Passion story, and then follow up with a few briefer remarks. We begin with John chapter 18.
Okay. I'll start the reading there, and I'll just set it up by saying, I hope you not only hear it, but I hope you are drawn into the story. And by that, I mean, I hope you can kind of get a sense of what is actually happening and kind of walk along with Jesus on the journey here. After Jesus had spoken these words, he went out with his disciples across the Kidron Valley to a place where there was a garden, which he and his disciples entered. Now Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place because Jesus often met there with his disciples. So Judas brought a detachment of soldiers together with police from the chief priests and the Pharisees. And they came there with lanterns and torches and weapons. Then Jesus, knowing all that was to happen to him, came forward and asked them, "Whom are you looking for?" They answered, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus replied, "I am he." Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them. When Jesus said to them, "I am he," they stepped back and fell to the ground. Again he asked them, "Whom are you looking for?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus answered, "I told you that I am he. So if you are looking for me, let these men go." This was to fulfill the word that he had spoken. "I did not lose a single one of those whom you gave me." Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it, struck the high priest's slave, and cut off his right ear. The slave's name was Malchus. Jesus said to Peter, "Put your sword back in its sheath. Am I not to drink the cup that the Father has given me?" So the soldiers, their officer, and the Jewish police arrested Jesus and bound him.
First, they took him to Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one who had advised the people that it was better to have one person die for the people. Simon Peter and another disciple followed Jesus. Since that disciple was known to the high priest, he went in with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest, but Peter was standing outside at the gate. So the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out, spoke to the woman who guarded the gate, and brought Peter in. The woman said to Peter, "You are not one of this man's disciples, are you?" He said, "I am not." Now, the slaves and the police had made a charcoal fire because it was cold, and they were standing around it and warming themselves. Peter also was standing with them and warming himself. Then the high priest questioned Jesus and his disciples and about his teaching. Jesus answered, "I have spoken openly to the world. I've always taught in synagogues and in the temple where everyone comes together. I've said nothing in secret. Why do you ask me? Ask who heard what I said to them. They know what I said." When he had said this, one of the police standing nearby Jesus struck him on the face, saying, "Is this how you answer your high priest?" Jesus answered, "If I have spoken wrongly, testify to the wrong. But if I have spoken rightly, why do you strike me?" Then Annas sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. Now, Simon Peter was standing and warming himself. They asked him, "You are not also one of his disciples, are you?" Peter denied it and said, "I'm not." One of the slaves of the high priest, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, asked, "Did I not see you in the garden with him?" Again, Peter denied it. And at that moment, the cock crowed.
Then they took Jesus from Caiaphas to Pilate's headquarters. It was early in the morning. They themselves did not enter the headquarters so as to avoid ritual defilement and be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered, "If this man were not a criminal, we would not have handed him over to you." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him according to your law." The religious leaders replied, "We are not permitted to put anyone to death." This was to fulfill what Jesus had said when he indicated the kind of death he was to die. Then Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "You asked this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Well, Pilate asked him, "So are you a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." Pilate asked him, "Well, what is truth?" And after he had said this, he went out to the crowd again and told him, "I find no case against you, but you have a custom that I release someone for you at the Passover. Do you want me to release for you your king?" He shouted in reply, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a bandit.
Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. And the soldiers wove a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they dressed him in a purple robe. They kept coming up to him saying, "Hail, King of the Jews," and striking him on the face. Pilate went out again and said to them, "Look, I'm bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no case against him." So Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." When the chief priests and the police saw him, they shouted, "Crucify him, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him. I find no case against him." The people answered him, "We have a law, and according to that law, he ought to die because he is claimed to be the Son of God." Now, when Pilate heard this, he was more afraid than ever. He entered the headquarters again and asked Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave him no answer. Pilate therefore said to him, "Do you refuse to speak to me? Do you not know that I have power to release you and power to crucify you?" Jesus answered, "You would have no power over me unless it had been given you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin." From then on, Pilate tried to release him, but the people cried out, "If you release this man, you are no friend of the emperor. Everyone who claims to be a king sets himself against the emperor." When Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus outside and sat on the judge's bench at a place called the Stone Pavement, or in Hebrew, Gabbatha. Now, it was the day of preparation for the Passover, and it was about noon. He said to the people, "Here is your king." They cried out, away with him, crucify him." Pilate asked them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests answered, "We have no king but the emperor."
Then he handed him over to them to be crucified. So they took Jesus, and carrying the cross by himself, he went out to what is called the place of the skull, which in Hebrew is called Golgotha. There they crucified him, with him two others, one on either side, with Jesus between them. Pilate also had an inscription written and put on the cross. It read, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." Many people read this inscription because the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Hebrew, in Latin, and in Greek. Then the chief priest said to Pilate, "Do not write the King of the Jews, but this man said, 'I am the King of the Jews.'" Pilate answered, "What I have written, I have written." When the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they took his clothes and divided them into 4 parts, one for each soldier. They also took his tunic. Now the tunic was seamless, woven in one piece from the top. So they said to one another, let's not tear it, but cast lots for it to see who would get it. This was to fulfill what the scriptures say. They divided my clothes among themselves, and for my clothing they cast lots. That is what the soldiers did. Meanwhile, standing near the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary of Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing beside her, he said to his mother, "Woman, here is your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Here is your mother." And from that hour, the disciple took her into his own home. After this, when Jesus knew that all was now finished, he said, in order to fulfill the scripture, "I am thirsty." A jar full of sour wine was standing there, so they put a sponge full of the wine on a branch of hyssop and held it to his mouth. When Jesus received the wine, he said, "It is finished." Then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. The word of the Lord.
Well, the reason we read all of this this coming Sunday, some of you will recognize that much of what you're hearing is a repeat from the previous Sundays as we were given it in parts. But the reason we read this coming Sunday is because we begin Holy Week. And over the years, there has been less participation in the full context of Holy Week than in the Sundays bracketing Holy Week, what used to be known as Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday, of course. And Palm Sunday is all about celebrating Jesus' entry into Jerusalem, and Easter Sunday is all about celebrating Jesus' resurrection. Between those two is the evening of betrayal, Maundy Thursday, Holy Thursday, when Jesus is handed over to the authorities, and his actual crucifixion on Good Friday. So in order not to go from the celebration of Palm Sunday to the celebration of Easter, we incorporate the Passion narrative into the Sunday prior to Easter so that we can get the full context of the Holy Week, so that people understand and people feel and get that the celebration of Easter does not come from the celebration of Palm Sunday, but from the betrayal and devastation of Maundy Thursday and Good Friday. And resurrection comes from death. Celebration does not give birth to celebration. It's just not about that. Craig?
And I could only echo what you said here. And again, there isn't going to be a proclaimed or preached word from any pastor, but I think that's an important piece here, that we let the scriptures speak for themselves rather than anyone in trying to interpret that story. I think it's a standalone piece that needs to be read from beginning to end to understand the fullness of why this king had to come. And all the characters in that story that refused to accept only confirmed that we need a savior, a Messiah, and Jesus is the fulfillment of that. So at the very close of John's story, he says, "It is finished." And some thought that day that it was Jesus who was finished, but the way he came and for whom he came, everything is now complete. It's a done deal. So all we can say is thanks be to God for that.
I think a good place to end up.
Thank you.
Have a good week of reflection as we prepare to enter into this holiest week of the church year.
Yeah, I agree.